On the morning of the referendum result, my wife and I woke up to listen to the Today programme, and our first reaction, I think both of us, we were absolutely distraught. That was the initial reaction. This feeling of shock then it turned into a feeling of uncertainty. Where has the result left our country and ourselves? Um, it turned then into a feeling of sadness. I think some of the stages that you go through when you're grieving, because that moved on to pretty quickly onto a feeling of anger in terms of how had we got here? Why had 52% of our fellow citizens voted to come out of the European Union, an organisation which, to our minds, had benefited us economically, culturally, and in so many diverse ways. The anger then went on to particular points. For example, the failure of the Remain campaign to put a positive pitch for the benefits of membership of the European Union, the failure of political leadership, David Cameron calling a referendum which I believe was needless, because he appeared to be, and his party appeared to be, in fear of the rise of UKIP, the far right party. Also, which turned out a failure of leadership by the opposition, both the Labour Party and the party that I support, the Liberal Democrats. So that was our initial reaction on the morning and the immediate days after the Brexit result. The result of the referendum has taught me that the UK is much more divided than probably most of us thought. As a Scotsman, it has shown me that there is more of a push for a second referendum on Scottish independence. And in Northern Ireland, particularly after the recent result of Sinn Féin running second in the recent Irish election, that I think it's fairly apparent that at some point in the near future there will be a poll on reunification of the island of Ireland. The country appears much more divided, I think, than we believed a few years ago. And that's not just a nationalistic division between the component parts of the United Kingdom. There is this gulf in wealth between London and some of the poorer parts of the north of England, South Wales, for example, northwest England, a wealth gap, a health gap. There's significant division demographically between the age groups. From what I've read in the opinion polls, older people by and large voted to leave the European Union, which is something I've coming from that age group myself, I find very hard to get my head around. But obviously younger people take a different view, because they are the ones over the next few years who are going to be really sorely affected by leaving Europe in terms of their ability to study, to carry out academic work, to live, marry, travel seamlessly between the EU countries. So it has portrayed for me a picture of a country that is very divided, not just in one element, but in 3 or 4, 5 or 6 elements. I have a couple of personal stories insofar as the effect of Brexit and the referendum has applied to me. Firstly, I've found, probably like a number of people in the country, it has put a strain on family relationships. My brother, who lives in the northwest, in Argyll, in the northwest of Scotland, whom I've generally got on very well with, him and his family. He voted to come out of the European Union. He voted for Brexit. I did not agree with his reasons or his rationale for leaving the European Union, particularly as he himself has travelled a number of times to Europe, both on family holidays and to watch sporting events. But he was driven by the immigration debate and also this concept of taking back control. And I find now that we just cannot discuss the topic of Brexit. We can't talk about it. That was a negative effect it's had. On a more positive effect, I have very good friends in France, a couple who live just outside Paris, and we have known each other for just over 40 years. We first met in Edinburgh, and my wife and I visit Anne and Michelle almost every year now. We meet up when Scotland play France at the rugby in Paris and so on. And in fact, in a week or two, we're going over to Brittany on a gastronomic tour of Brittany, which we're really looking forward to. But Brexit has had a very positive effect on that relationship. It's strengthened the bond that my wife and I feel with our friends in France. And they, like many acquaintances in Europe, are absolutely aghast and shocked at why Britain has decided to go down this path on taking itself out of this massive trade market that benefits both parties. It benefits not just the UK, but it benefits France and other countries in Europe. So there have been negatives, particularly in the family relationships, but it has also brought me, strengthened my relationship with my friends on the continent. I'm not sure how this is all going to eventually conclude insofar as winners and losers go. I think Britain will be a loser overall. It will have a detrimental effect on Europe, but I do not believe as significantly as the effect on Britain, the United Kingdom. At the moment, I personally have felt, other than the emotional effect, I have not felt any immediate effect, direct effect of Brexit. Having said that, we are in the middle of this transition period when Britain is still compliant with European regulations. We are still in the single market and the trading bloc. The direct effects will not, I believe, be apparent until 2021, 2022. I think, as has been said before, that the economic effects are not immediate. They don't suddenly appear within a day, within a month. The economic effects take half a year, 2 years to make themselves felt. I believe that next year, when businesses, particularly businesses that have a complex supply chain with Europe, such as the automotive industry and the food processing industry, they will feel a direct effect, both because of the economic consequences, but also the immigration consequences, where I think even now European workers and labour, particularly in the less skilled areas, are moving back home, and it will be more and more difficult for even businesses, say in financial services, to bring their highly qualified people to the UK. There's also the issue that Britain is not being seen as a particularly pleasant place to come and work and take up employment. So I think the consequences in the next 1 to 3 years will be significant on the United Kingdom, on Britain, and certainly will not be positive. I thought about the consequences for the island of Ireland, the Republic and Northern Ireland during the referendum campaign. Ireland was not discussed. It was barely mentioned during the referendum campaign. I think this is fairly typical of the attitude of Britain towards the island of Ireland, particularly the English attitude to Ireland. It's basically ignored. It's seen as of little consequence to the overall sort of British political class. This has had dire effects throughout history, and it was obvious that if Britain voted to leave the European Union, there was going to be a significant effect on our relationship with the Republic of Ireland, and also the economic consequence of how trade would flow between Northern Ireland, which is part of Britain having come out of the European Union, and the Republic, which remained a constituent member of the European Union. I think the most concerning thing for me was the effect that this would have on the Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace to Northern Ireland a number of years ago, and this would put the agreement under significant strain. After the referendum and the discussions which took place on trying to reach a trade agreement with the European Union under Prime Minister Theresa May, I thought the backstop that was raised as a means of modifying the effects of the decision on Northern Ireland, that was a positive. But the right wing, in particular in the Conservative Party and the ERG, appear to have nothing to do with the backstop, and you can see in their views and their discussions on the matter that again they had little understanding of the issues pertaining to Northern Ireland. So I think that the whole Irish border issue is very worrying, and it is something that really has to be resolved. Before I would say before the 31st of December of this year. What brings the Northern Ireland situation more relevant to me is that I have a nephew who works in Northern Ireland, and if, as I understand, there are still issues sectarian issues going on in Northern Irish society. We've seen that recently with some of the incidents involving dissident Republicans. That I would be very concerned for the safety of my nephew in his work in the 6 counties. So yes, it is a big thing for me how the Irish issue is resolved relative to Brexit. As a Scot, I have a particular interest, obviously, in how the fallout of the referendum has affected Scotland. I feel myself as a proud, not a nationalist, but a proud Scotsman, proud European. I have found one of the effects of the referendum is it has lessened my affinity for the construct of Britain as a geographic unit or a political unit. The majority of people in Scotland voted to remain in the European Union. This has self-evidently been almost ignored by the UK government in Westminster. and I think will give a significant push as the months pass, and particularly as as the effects of Brexit are felt in the Scottish economy. It will give a greater push to holding a second referendum on Scottish independence. Personally, when Scotland voted in 2014 on the independence issue, down here we didn't have a vote in the matter, but had I been resident in Scotland, at that time I would probably have voted to remain part of the United Kingdom. However, since Brexit, to my mind, that has brought about a material change in the circumstances of devolution and Scotland's relationship with Westminster. Were there a second independence referendum now or in the next year or so, and I was resident in Scotland, I would certainly be minded to vote for an independent Scotland, because for me, the overriding issue is membership of the European Union and the benefits that brings, both to Britain and in particular Scotland. Scotland is hugely dependent on European labour, particularly in the tourist and hospitality industries. And if that is affected, then there is going to be a significantly negative effect on the Scottish economy, and I think that will give an extra push for a positive outcome, or a second referendum and a vote for Scottish independence. In one word, worried.